Greeting YouTube. Today I'll be discussing Rutger Hauer's All Those Moments. Stories of heroes, villains, replicants, and Blade Runners. And it made me smile that he used the picture from Batman Begins as his splash picture on the back. This is the author. It's a great picture, don't mind, it's a great role. And it's the role that he opens the book with, because it was apparently the last film he had done prior to the publication of this book. I love the internet. I'm on here every day for hours at a time, usually on YouTube. And while looking at a thread elsewhere, I think it might have been on Metafilter, someone mentioned that this book existed. And I found a copy on Amazon for a penny and ordered it within 2 minutes. So with shipping, this cost me $4. Because someone recommended that it was very good, and the person is correct. This is an excellent book. Now, this was written with Patrick Quinlan. Now, he's a journalist for the most part, and I don't know how much impact he had on the writing style. I don't know how much he had to help Rutger Hauer. Rutger Hauer is an actor. He has done some directing. And while he has worked on his own lines and things, I don't think he's a scriptwriter, nor is he an author in his own right. He doesn't write a lot of fiction, things like that. Though I believe he has written poetry. He is a fan of poetry, in particular Russian poetry. I don't know how much impact the Mr. Quinlan had in this book, but the voice of Rutger Hauer comes through from the first line. All through this book, I had a sense that Rutger Hauer was speaking to me. Now, as my greatest geek moment I've mentioned in the past was that back when we had video replies on YouTube, Rutger Hauer did a video reply to my review of Blade Runner, which was my greatest geek moment. So I've actually heard his conversational voice on his videos and in interviews and things like that, besides his film roles. And this book sounds like him. There was never a moment when I wasn't listening to Rutger Hauer's voice in my head while reading this. And it flows beautifully. I just didn't want to put it down. Flat out, I just wanted to read this thing cover to cover. It just moved that smoothly. And it's not a perfectly chronological story, which is fine. You don't have to. He starts with Batman Begins, and he goes into his past. And it'll jump back and forth, and sometimes one story of a film or a point in his life will logically lead to another story, which isn't necessarily in the same chronological order, which is fine, because sometimes we tell tales that have nothing to do with time and have to do with contextual relationship to each other. And so this is his whole life, from birth all the way through. Now, I didn't realize it, but he was actually born born in Nazi-occupied territory in 1945. I wasn't aware that he was actually born in an area that had been controlled by the Nazis. That was kind of interesting to my mind. Because he's played a number of roles of that era. He's played Nazis, and he's played freedom fighters from World War II, and I believe he mentions hoping to work on a project in the future, I don't know if he has since then, that dealt with World War II again, with resistance fighters, I believe. And he has played those roles because he fits that wonderful Aryan stereotype so well. He's tall, he's handsome, he's got that light hair, though they did bleach it repeatedly, unfortunately, for the Blade Runner role of Roy Batty. I'm always curious about that. The name Roy Batty. Was that the name the people that created the replicants gave him, or is it a name that the replicants themselves came up with? Because you would think that they would give them probably a name and then a designation of some variety. But Roy Batty sounds like a person. So is that something that the replicants themselves adopted, or was it given to them to help them kind of cope with the fact that they were biological machines? They were intended to burn very bright and very quickly. And it's not surprising that the largest hunk of the book where it deals with a film was Blade Runner, because that was the greatest role of his career, and he admits this. But he has won numerous accolades over his life for roles he has played, both on television and in movies. And he did quite a bit of television work. I wasn't aware of that. In fact, he started out doing a television series when he was fairly young, an unknown, essentially. And And he's done so many genres. He's covered so many different things. Now, my memories of him were, of course, the first film I ever saw him in was Blade Runner, but Ladyhawke, The Blood of Heroes, Blind Fury, these are the things that pop to my mind when I think of Rutger Hauer. Sin City is one of the more recent roles I can think of off the top of my head that he was in. And I loved him because he really put himself into his roles so successfully. He talks about how he does that. He talks about how he not just tries to pare the role down to its minimum number of lines he can, and then try to deliver the rest of the character through his acting. But he tries to play off the other actors, and I have a great deal of respect for that. A lot of actors come into roles and they want to play their role. And here's their role. And what goes on outside that role is sometimes ignored. And it doesn't necessarily mean that that role is not great and they are not great at that role. But it doesn't seem to be meshed into the fabric of the film. Whereas Rutger Hauer, to my mind, does that. And he talks about that. He wants to play off the other actors. He wants to see what they're doing. And then change his role and his dialogue and his style so that it fits the situation better. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And he admits this. Sometimes it's a crapshoot. Sometimes you get magic, sometimes you don't. I haven't seen all of his films. He mentions a number of films in here that I would probably like to see that I haven't seen yet. I probably add them to my collection. I believe I have Ladyhawke. I haven't watched that in a while. And that's just a great film. In fact, I almost know it because I was kind of disappointed there wasn't a commentary track on it. I don't think I've ever seen a commentary track with Rutger Hauer, which is a great pity because I would like to find out if that exists. I should do a search for that online. But one of the things that cracked me up and was just baffling when I read about Ladyhawke, because he really liked that role, he had originally wanted to play Navarre, but they offered him the role of the bishop. And he didn't want to play the bishop because it was a small role. It was kind of cardboardy. He didn't think it was all that interesting, so he turned it down. They said, "Okay, fine. You don't get into every film you want to get into." But when the actor who was playing Navarre backed out, they offered the role to Rutger Hauer, and he hopped at the chance and was there in a hot minute. But the person that was supposed to play that role originally, now remember, this is a medieval fantasy film, was Kurt Russell. Stop for a second and think about that. That has got to be one of the dumbest casting ideas I have ever heard of. Just amazing. Other things I found out in this that I thought was great, he likes to ride motorcycles. He owns one. At least one. He may own more than one. He loves cars. He owns his own 55-foot 18-wheeler in Europe that he has a customized trailer in the back, which is his home, which has a garage for a Mini and his motorcycle. And he takes that with him around Europe. He's done, at least at the time of the writing the book, he's done 15 films with that trailer. He just pulls up, boom, I'm home. That's awesome. He has a house in L.A. because he does a lot of work in the United States. And he owns an RV there, which he and his wife take out for vacations. And it just delighted me to think about him. It's just in some RV park, and someone gets out of their RV and looks at the guy next to him. The guy walks out of his RV, and it's Rutger Hauer. That would just be trippy, because the guy just loves motor vehicles. He loves driving. He likes cars and things, and that just made me smile. This was an excellent book. It was very informative. He comes across as a genuine man. He's a pacifist at heart. He talks about the difficulties he had playing with some of these roles where he has to play these horrible people that do horrible things, and it adversely affects him emotionally. This is awesome. It was just such a good book, such a great read. So if you are a Rutger Hauer fan and a fan of movies in general, I really recommend this book. If you are a fan of Blade Runner like I am, this is something you have to read just to get inside the film and get inside one of the actors that played one of the greatest roles in science fiction that has ever been done. Roy Batty may have been the antagonist in the film, but he is a hero. And he dies as one. He dies in grace. And how many actors can say they've pulled that off?